fiscal year 22 current budget is the $2.8 million use of fund balance that was approved at one of the previous meetings. So once we make the changes that are in the mayor's proposed budget,
Just to be clear, the budget that was passed 2-3 months ago appropriated roughly $3 million from the fund balance to balance budget.
correct, $2.8 million.
Okay, I don't think that was brought up at the time. I don't, whether or not it was, it certainly wasn't called out. Honestly, I'm glad I voted against the budget because the changes, it was rather quick, but
I wonder why you did it.
yeah,
I even asked you, you're like,
well, you did it, you did an email,
yeah.
but, I'd asked some questions the night before, and I wasn't comfortable at that time. But I certainly, I don't know if the rest of the council knew, but we're taking our fund balance from $13 million.
The budget that you're referring to wasn't the budget that was allocating the $3 million. If you go all the way back to June of last year, and you look at anticipated fund balance at that point, adjustments were made along the way, but it wasn't January where the first time $3 million of fund balance was allocated. I don't remember the June 30th number, the projected use to fund balance, but it dates to last year's original budget.
Yes, and to what I have.
Yeah, I guess, well, anyway, that would be a question, right, what happened on last year's budget, right? First thing, $3 million, right, go 13, 10, potentially 7, right, kind of go on the wrong way compared to what, the council had done and council administration over the past, 8 to 10 years. So it seems strange that, if you pass the budget by May 1st, and it was a balanced budget a month later in June of last year, you're already $20 million. Anyway, we'll put it.
But you could pass a budget that has an intended use of fund balance also. So I'm admitting that I don't know what that exact number is, but the $3 million didn't exist between May and June, or June and only in July is what I'm saying. What I don't remember is what the anticipated use of fund balance was in last year's original council-approved budget.
So wasn't some of that $3 million, or a big chunk of it, due to the new contracts and the raises and the bumps and all that?
To answer your question, I think if we could get a bullet point of what the reasons are, all of us are probably at some point in time would be asking if it's based upon the contracts, right? But if we're going from 13 to 10, then whether really, I don't know, half of that is ours, right? The budget, half of that is ours, half of that is the previous council. So.
Yeah, through chair, I think that's a good idea. Like last year, the amended budget for fiscal year 21 actually had like a $2 million use of fund balance, but we actually finished the year like $1 million positive. And that's because of carryover of one-time expenditures that were budgeted that we carried over to this current year. So of that $2.8 million, a lot of that is one-time expenditures for vehicles, equipment, things that, in my opinion, is appropriate use of fund balance. One-time, as long as we're keeping appropriate levels. But to your point, if you want a bullet point, because it is a newer council and you want to know, we can put something together for sure.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so just going over kind of the highlights of the changes in the fiscal year 22. So what I'm looking at here is you have your fiscal year 22 current budget, which shows approximate use of fund balance 2.8 million, and then the next column to the right is the projected mayor's proposed budget for fiscal year 22, which shows that $2.9 million. So again, $100,000 difference. So just looking at the revenue, high level of the revenue, the current budget, the revenue is at $42 million. It's going down slightly, about $110,000. And what that is that there's two items there that play key. The first one is we're actually getting a little bit more stage sharing revenue that we anticipated, approximately $280,000. But we're also getting a little bit of reduction in the court revenue, ticket revenue, about 400,000. So the net between those two is about $110,000 reduction to revenue. On the expense side, the expenses are actually increasing by only about $5,200. But the two main items on the expense side is you have the insurance risk management department going up $402,000. That's because of additional claim professional service related to risk management services, and also a little bit bump in the premiums for some of the items that were originally budgeted when the premiums were approved. But the main thing though is I think is in the supplements and in the professional services. The reduction in the employee fringe benefits of $364,000 is really just retiree healthcare costs are coming in better than what was anticipated. And when we do these numbers, we always make sure we do projections and we do trend analysis and we project out the rest of the year to figure out where we're at. And everybody who knows me knows I'm a conservative person, so hopefully we'll have more savings in those areas. So, okay. Then going on to fiscal year 23. So the total fiscal year 23 mayor's proposed budget, you can see that column, which is 4 columns from the right side of the page, and then you have your difference column. The one thing to point out is that the last column on the right, that's what we call the department head / finance adjusted version of the budget. So as you may not be aware, but the mayor goes out and asks the departments to submit budgets to him so he can review. And as you can look at that column on the second page there, that was a negative $7.3 million. So this is unfortunately not uncommon that you have these requests come in, people ask for the world, and then the administration has to go through, review everything, and then come up with a balanced budget. So that's why that column there in the end is there, so that council can see what we kind of started off with during this budget process. That being said, going into the fiscal year 23, the total revenue is $44.6 million, which is about 6.3% increase from the current year projected. And some of the highlights there is you've got, like I said, you got some little bit of tax revenue increase. You have a $581,000 decrease in federal revenue. And what that is this year, fiscal year 22, we have ARPA funds that we allocated for the purchase of equipment, premium pays, things like that. One thing to note in this budget is that there is no ARPA funds, there's very minimum ARPA funds budgeted. We do have a good allocation still left, and the administration will review and is still reviewing those items. So once those items are known, then we will probably do a budget amendment at that time to recognize the federal revenue and then the additional expenses that we have with that. So keep that in mind that once that ARPA fund grant budget is reviewed and approved, then it will be brought forward by council to review and approve as well too. So, but those funds are not included in this version of the budget. Some of the other highlights in the revenue is you have a $300,000 increase from contributions from local government. And what that is just a bump and increase from the TCDC. TCDC has given the city distributions over the years, and they've already calculated what their distribution can be for this fiscal year coming up. So that $1.5 million is a good number. It is a calculated number. It is already there that the city can get from TCDC for their contribution. And people, before council, when people don't know what that is that's really a payback for the city's investment from what we call the 96 voter levy. If you remember the apartments in the southwest area, there was a 30-year millage that the city taxpayers paid for TCDC, and the city to buy TCDC to run those areas. So what happens is when those sites have surplus cash, that money goes back to TCDC, which can give it back to the city for its return on investment, really. So that's what that amount represents. So that's the one item. The next item is charges for services went up about 14% or $484,000, and all that has to do with increasing some of the revenues for ALS, transporting back to higher levels now that it seems like the numbers are up now, so that's an estimate there. And TSX went up 270,000, but their expenses also went up as the volume, as the arenas are now open more to the public and the COVID restrictions are lifted. They're looking to get back to where they were back before COVID. So that's what that adjustment represents. Fines and forfeitures is going up approximately 1.7 million, which is 36%. And the basis behind this is, talking with everybody, is that if you look at where the city was in fiscal year 20, it was at 6.5. Even in fiscal year 19, it was at 8 million. So we believe that's conservatively being budgeted based on if we got more, now that we're going to get more staffing and things like that. So that's one of the items as well too. The other revenue area, 600.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, before you go off that, right, that was a big chunk of how you missed the budget. I'm always reluctant to base a budget on fines and forfeitures. The goal on fines and forfeitures should be 0. But anyway, that just looks like a very, very large increase, and it's a potential risk with the budget, right? I mean, what that means is that, writing more tickets